Hey everybody, good morning. It's Jillian. So you got to see a little slice of my morning routine with my animal, and it hit me this morning when I was on the toilet. Go figure, right? All the best thoughts come from when you're eliminating. Well, children learn about life and death from their pets. Children will learn about what life is by how the parent treats their animal and how they deal with the animal when the animal passes away. Because they're not doing jelly juice. And right there, of course, the child is going to learn that death is inevitable. And that is the first beginning of understanding what death is. So this is interesting. I had a pet as a child. My mom got us when we were kids a little Tibetan terrier. And my mother crate trained the animal. We had to take the animal outside every day, a half, like 15 minutes in the morning before we went to school, and then 15 minutes in the evening before we went to bed, or right after dinner or before dinner. Okay, and even when it was dark outside and I was like scared to go outside with my dog, and this is like in Saratoga, California, so that's like, I mean, that was like the suburbs in a pretty high echelon area. So should I be scared? Well, yeah, I was scared to take my dog out after dark, 15 minutes. So I took a pen with me and said, okay, if anyone messes with me, I'm going to stab them with a pen, because that was my own personal protection. I felt anxiety taking my dog out after dark. And so, I would go out there, walk out there for like, and she wouldn't pee, or he wouldn't pee. His name was Jester. He wouldn't pee. So I would just take it back in. My mother would feel and see if she's like, oh, he didn't pee, so you take him back outside again. I'm like, fuck. So I take the dog back outside again. Finally, Jester peed, and so she come back in, and mom's like, oh, okay, the dog peed, go to bed. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then I think after maybe a year, I don't even know how long, but she gave the dog away. She gave the dog away to because she didn't want to take care of it. We weren't taking care of it. I mean, we were like, eighth grade, ninth grade, going to eighth grade. Yeah, it was junior high. And so it turned out that, Jester, was taken to a farm or someplace where I don't even know where the hell she took her. Him. So I never got to see an animal die. I never grew up really with an animal and watched it from its puppyhood all the way to its end of life. So I never was exposed to death even with a pet. Now there are people in my life that have died that I never watched them die. So death was never really anything that I had to face as a child. Even as an adult, people have died in my world. Like, I knew a girl named Tina who was a helicopter pilot, and she died one summer because her helicopter got tangled into the lines during her training session. Yeah, it's sad. I'm sad. Okay. I've been to funerals, or I've been to different, wakes and stuff like that, but I never really had a connection to these people. So it never really affected me like some people. Like, right at this point, I'm not in contact with my parents. So I hope my parents stay alive for as long as they can, but I know the inevitable, when they're in their 70s, at some point they're going to pass away. And yeah, it's going to affect me when it happens. I know it. I'm prepared for it in my body, mind, and spirit, because I know that when you let your body disintegrate, eventually that's going to happen when you let your body disintegrate. And so it hit me when I got my animal. Well, not hit me, I'm sorry. Let me cycle back here. So when my husband's friend back in 2015, when I kept telling my husband, back when in 2015, that I wanted a dog because now we had room for one. We weren't living in somebody else's property. We weren't in a little apartment. We had a house where we had a yard that was fenced in. I'm like, dude, we should get an animal. So around my birthday in 2015, they got me an animal. They're like, here's a dog. I'm like, okay. And even prior to that, actually in 2012, my husband we went to a pet store because we were in Lake City, Florida, and this pet store was going out of business, and so there was a dragon named Hector that I named him Hector. This dragon, it's a little bearded dragon, and I'm like, I've never dealt with reptiles. I never had a reptile. I don't even know what the hell to do with them. But my husband's like, hey, because he's had reptiles before. He had pets before. I don't know how. I mean, I know you can have a pet. I mean, you can take care of a reptile even in a place like Ohio, but you have to make sure that they're in containment is warm. But I was thrust with a bearded dragon that I had never had any kind of exposure to ever in my life. And then my husband's on the road 28 days out of the month. So I'm left with taking care of this animal called Hector, and I'm like, "Oh my God." So I got close to the pet store that had the crickets and the mealworms, and learned how to take care of a bearded dragon and make sure the terrarium is the temperature is just right, make sure the water is there. Trying to figure out how to freaking take care of and keep Hector, my bearded dragon, alive. And yes, and I don't want the reptile, I don't want Hector to be pooping in its terrarium, in its enclosure. So I would take Hector out with like mitts because I didn't like the scratchy claws of the lizard. So I had like, oven mitts and took Hector out and then put him on the floor and gave him a bath every so often. The warm bath would then encourage him to poop. So he would poop in his bath. I'd take him out of the bath and put him, or I would let him run around, the room, and then he would poop that way. I would clean it up and then put him back in his enclosure, and he would go and sun himself. So you can see back in my pictures that I had a lizard. Now, when we moved from Florida, I was like, I am not taking a tropical animal that doesn't live in the desert, into some place like Ohio where it gets cold, and I have to keep, the house warm, keep everything warm. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into anyways here in Ohio. We were living with family, extended family, and so there was no room for a Hector. So I gave Hector to someone that I knew would take care of it. And so Hector is somewhere in Florida. And Hector, I'm sure, is fine. I'm not worried about Hector. So I never had to watch Hector die. Hector would never die under my care. Like, no animal would die under my care, because I find every way possible to keep that freaking animal alive, because any animal that dies under my care, it says a lot about me. Okay? And so even back then, this is back in 2012, prior to the J Juice, I needed to keep that animal alive. So, yeah, so I always took seriously having a pet. Now, I've been a nanny before, and I would take care of people's animals, okay, and yeah, it was fun. And then, the animal is given back, of course. Not that I would take it, but I mean, I would take care of the animal, and then I would leave and go do other things. So it's like, so now I have my own dog. This dog is an extension of me. This dog is an extension of me. And so then I see the correlation when I was on the toilet today, that yes, kids learn how expendable life is based upon how the parent teaches what life is with that animal. Some people treat their animals like they're like show dogs, and they have to go and perform and do this and do that and whatever. Or some people will take their pit bulls and fight them or whatever, which you should not be doing. Or they try to just build up their muscles because so they can look great on Facebook or wherever else. And I'm like, Sugar is not a show dog. She's not like my slave. I don't teach her tricks. I'm just like, she just kind of does what she does. She does whatever kind of what I'm doing. If I'm doing a Facebook Live, whatever, she goes and relaxes and does whatever does. She has access to bones. She has access to toys. She has access to run around. She has the yards not fenced in, but eventually maybe one day that'll happen. But at this point, I go out with her every single day to take her pee and poo at least 4 or 5 times a day. And she has the capacity to run around. She doesn't run off. She doesn't run away from me. She could see another dog that's not in our yard but somewhere else, and she won't run after that dog or any human off the property. She knows her perimeter. And I realized that she knew her perimeter when I was even in my other house, because we let her out in the front yard and she wouldn't go into the street. She knows her, and I would create the boundaries. Okay, so she knows not to go past beyond. She'll try to push him, like I'm talking to a neighbor and I'm sort of between halfway on my line and their property line, my property line. She'll try to push it. She uses me as a barometer to figure out how far she can push her boundaries. And I'm like, no, stay here in the yard. And she gets it. Like, she hears what I'm saying. She understands her boundaries. And she respects me. I respect her. I treat her as if she was my child. Because she is my continuous child. Because she doesn't have the reasoning to know really more than what her instincts tell her. And I'm the one that gives her the ability to protect herself. Because I'm telling you, if I let her body go to disintegrate, if I didn't give her J juice, she would be then subject to whatever elements out there. And so, yeah. And so I treat her like I treat myself. I understand symptoms, and I've given her the Jilly juice. I gave her the Jilly juice more so a couple years ago when everything was all new. And people were like, oh my God, Jillian, salt, you're going to kill your dog with this, and people called the Humane Society me. I had the Humane Society calling me twice. And both times, Sugar, the first time they called on me because, I said I fed my dog something, and they're like, oh, we got to go check out your dog. And she was going through her healing process, so she was she was actually bigger than she is now because she was going through her recalibration with her fatty acids and all that. And so she was bigger. And so the only thing they had to say was, yeah, she's a little fat back then. And this is in 2018, 2017, 2018. Okay. And so then the second time when she got into a fight, she was in the back porch and I was actually in Washington, D.C. at the time visiting a friend. And my husband calls me. I was in the middle of lunch with my friend, and he's like, "Yeah, Sugar got into a fight. 2 dogs attacked her." And he said, like, I fought off one, the other one, I fought that one off, but she really held her own. And so she only suffered like 2 puncture wounds in the back of her neck because she was attacking one dog, and the other dog got her on the back of the neck. They didn't rip her apart at all because both my husband and Sugar were able to hold their own against 2 dogs. My husband really helped my dog fight off these 2 animals, and they were animals in our neighborhood. I don't know to this day who they are, and they haven't been let out since. And so I remember when I came home, like Jason, he didn't take her to the vet, but he used Jilly juice, and she's pretty much fine. And so I come home like a couple days after that incident, and I look at her, and the wound was crusted over, and I give her Jilly juice. She was definitely having a little bit of PTSD from that, and of course whatever viruses and bacteria she was exposed to. So she had trouble eating that whole week. Like, she wouldn't eat. For me being gone and being attacked, I think she went through some anxiety during that process. And that was in 2018. That's right. Or 2018, yeah. That was like right after Dr. Phil. Because Dr. Phil was like in March, and then I think I visited my friend. Yeah, because 2019, yeah, 2019 I wasn't visiting anybody. Or was I? Yeah, that was 2019. That's right. I was. So 2018 and I had okay, and then 2019. Yeah, so 2019. So anyways, so I said on Facebook that I healed my dog from 2 dogs, so I made it sound like, and I'm sure it sounded like she was ripped apart, and people know when dogs get in fights, it's 1 dog or 2 dogs will be all like mangled up and then the other dog will be okay. So they thought that basically Sugar was like mangled up, sitting somewhere, just left to her own devices with Jilly juice, and right. No, so I get a knock on the door, and here's the Humane Society going like, yeah, we hear, actually my husband called the Humane Society back then when it happened, and they wouldn't come out because of the 2 dogs, and so he's like, whatever. And I guess somebody called the Humane Society and said, hey, yeah, this girl, whatever, this Jilly juice bitch, she did this to whatever, and her dog isn't going to the vet, and she says she healed her dog with J juice. And so I get a knock at the door, and the Humane Society is like, hey, yeah, we got a call. And it said something that you're keeping your dog in the basement, and she's doing this, and I'm like, okay. So he goes, let me see your dog. So Sugar comes to the front door, and she's not locked in the fucking basement or anything. She comes to the door, and she comes out in the steps. She's not running away. She's not acting weird. There's Humane Society guy, knows animal behavior. He's like, oh. He looked at her, and he felt her, and he's like, yeah, she's fine. I ain't lying. The dog is fine. She had some issues with eating that week, and so when I kept giving her the Jilly juice, she finally was able to poop out whatever excess bacteria from her exposure to those animals, because who knows what those animals had. People take care of their dogs differently, so they have different viruses and different bacteria and different parasites. And so when I kept giving her the J juice, she was finally able to adapt to that new exposure, because two animals from another household is like a new microbiome. It's a new exposure. So essentially, eventually, those wounds that she had, they healed up, and they're not. I don't see them anymore. Okay, so and I didn't have to take her to the vet. She didn't have to get any rabies shots or nothing, because rabies is just another bacteria, parasite, whatever. All right, virus. Okay, so yeah, so she has different symptoms from different viruses coming through the environment. Her body goes through an upgrade. When you go through an upgrade, you're going to have different things happen. When animals are smaller than people, okay, so they're going to have faster upgrades and probably what would seem to be more severe. But it's just an upgrade. It's nothing to be. But here's the thing: when you don't give your dog what they need to handle the upgrade, then yeah, your animal could potentially die because they don't have what it takes to handle the upgrade. So yeah, you're going to take your dog to the vet, and the vet is going to stop the upgrade, and so the dog will then be anesthetized, cured, at peace, no more pain, right? But that's then now you're systematically, instead of now the dog being 50% dog or dead, now the dog will be now 60% dead until that dog is being cured out of existence. And so that's how kids learn about life and death, is how the parents take away the dog. The dog gets, given away, the dog leaves, the dog is taken to the vet and given all these antibiotics. So when the kid grows up, they're like, oh yeah, well, my dog died, so I'm going to eventually die at some point too. All things die. And you hear that on TV, in different modes of communication, media, whatever, that, oh yeah, people live and die, animals live and die. The way people take care of their pets is totally indicative of how they view themselves. Expendable, temporary, and then when their symptoms happen, people will put their dog down because of major symptoms. Or vets will be like, okay, well, I can't do anything more without me killing your dog. So I'm going to say, good luck, your dog's suffering, we got to put that dog down. When dog suffers because the owner has not given that dog's biochemistry what it needs to be able to handle the upgrade. Let me tell you, if everyone was put down because of a symptom, we would have no animals left. We would have no humans left. But symptoms are only evolution. But you have to support the dog and the cat's biochemistry, as well as the lizard, the bird, any animal you take care of. They have a very specific biochemistry that must be maintained. But oh no, people want to go and bury their animals every 15, 20 years, if that. If they're lucky, 18 years. And so, my mom had cats. She would declaw the cats because she didn't want them tearing up her furniture. But she kept her cats alive for a long time, 18 years of one of her, and that's indicative of how she takes care of herself too, because she'll stay alive for a while, probably longer than most people out there who have different issues or do not have, access to resources. Because yeah, my mom has access to resources, so she can afford the best. She can afford all the best medicine, all the best procedures, all the best of everything as far as for the animal, but still the end result is the animal died. The end result is she may have the best insurance, the best access to different care, but in the end, my parents will basically pass away at some point. But the way she took care of her animal is indicative of how she views herself. And so how I take care of my animal is exactly how I view myself and my life. Now I know life down the road is going to change for both of us. I know it. I'm prepared for it. Okay, and I even said, like if something happened to me and my husband both together, what will happen to Sugar? Well, I need to put something down. I did talk to somebody, say, hey, if something happens to me, I'll give you my dog, and someone that's on the chili juice, right? But will they have they might actually have, but will they, well, hopefully by the time that anything like that happens, or something happens to my husband and I both simultaneously, hopefully they'll have the, well, no, because, here's the thing. sugar is so healthy that they won't have to nurse her. All they have to do is maintain sugar. So if anything happened to me, I would want somebody in my jelly juice world. I would have sugar shipped off to a friend. I would never leave with anyone that I knew treated themselves as poorly, like just saying that life is expendable. I would never leave my dog with anyone that wasn't doing jelly juice or believed in jelly juice or is somewhere along the way seeing jelly juice. I'd ship her to freaking England to my friend John if I had to. Water. I mean, that's the thing is not that I would. That's a little extreme, but I mean, there's someone in America, I'm sure they take care of her. But that's the thing is, I would never give my dog to someone who believed that people should die and that animals should die someday, because she would not get the care she needs. Yeah, people would not understand her. She would not get the life that I want her. So I gotta stay alive for my dog. I gotta be around for my dog. My dog depends upon me. That is because she can't go and buy food on her own. She can't go in and go in and out of the house. It's not like she has a doggy door. I basically control her every move. So if I'm being in control of her every move and her everything, that I gotta make sure that she doesn't have to suffer for nothing, or feel anxiety, or be put in harm's way. I don't understand how people lose their dogs. I see people on Facebook that lose their dogs. Oh, my dog is lost. How did that happen? What were you not doing? What were you doing? Why is your dog running away? Some dogs are runners. Well, what's in them, what kind of genetic anomaly that you haven't fixed that's in them to run? Whether it's how you treat them or there's some kind of defect that you haven't fixed. Why are they running away from you? Because I'm telling you, animals do not run away from something that is keeping them alive. They don't bite the hand that feeds them, and they don't run away from an environment that is taking care of them. When I let my dog off the porch, okay, and I know and we don't have a fenced in yard, and if I don't see her because she goes behind the truck, I call it Sugar, and eventually she emerges. But then when she does, then I find a trainer that she don't go around the car where I can't see you, but she'll look to me and say, hey, is this okay? She'll keep looking back to make sure that what she's doing is within the confines and the limitations that I set for her, because yes, I don't want her going off the property, roaming around where someone could mistaken her for some wild pit bull and hurt her. So I'm afraid what she's going to do. I'm afraid what other people out there who don't even know who she is, what they're going to do. So I have to protect her against that. And so yeah, I have a whole force field of protection around my animal. Because I know I live in a world full of imbalanced people that don't understand pit bulls, that don't understand dogs, that don't understand me. And so I take her life and my life so fucking seriously that some people think I overreact. But I'm sorry. I have to be the one to maintain both our lives. I got to make sure that I got to look out for potential pitfalls. And that's what the Jelly Juice world is: strategy. How do you stay alive in a world that's full of imbalances? You got to strategize up the yin yang in this world. If you don't, then you will be then subject to somebody else's intentions. Strength is knowing where you have control and where you don't have control, and then making sure you put down the necessary measures to keep the control within your world. Not everything you can control, but there are many things that you can. And so this is what kids need to learn, is that they have the ultimate control over their body, mind, and spirit, as well as their animals. And if a parent's like, oh yeah, your animal's life is really expendable, they're subject to be given away, subject to be, destroyed because I don't want to take care of it because it has seizures and whatever. When animals go through many seizures, it's because their body is trying to recalibrate and you haven't given what it needs, and it's been exposed to new viruses in the environment, and you still haven't given your animal what it needs. The animals are bred with predispositions. They are reproduced. When dogs keep being reproduced, those anomalies compound. Yeah, they're cute as puppies. Every freaking animal and a human is cute when they're young. But the real testament to your understanding of how an animal really works is when you keep them alive when they are actually mature. Not when they're all cute and fluffy and all whatever, but when they actually are an adult, mature animal. How are you keeping them alive? Or are you going to let them be destroyed by the elements? And so yeah, it's tough to watch my Facebook. People look at their lives as expendable as well as their animals' lives. And animals don't ask to be here. They're being reproduced without their permission, and so do humans. But humans now have a better, humans really don't have an excuse except for ignorance. If you haven't been exposed by information, then yeah, you'll do what you're taught. But if you've been exposed by information and you still let your animal get destroyed by the system and by you, that right there is not fair to your animal. But I can't stop that, and I know it. So I do the best I can to impart information, and if you feel angry at my information, then maybe you should check yourself and figure out how many animals have you buried in your lifetime? How many animals have you let go be destroyed when they're not fun anymore, when they're not a cute puppy anymore, and they're a mature adult? How are you? Yeah, that's the thing, is that, humans that are on the death trajectory do not value mature life. Obviously, look at your grandparents. People let their parents in an old home. They let their parents pass away. They're the ones that say, "Okay, pull the plug, do this, do that." I mean, it sucks, I know, but that's what we were taught, and now I'm offering something completely different than that whole death life scenario model belief system. That is a death occultist type of thing. And so, if you have buried several animals in your lifetime and you have a judgment on what I'm doing, my animal is still alive. Despite all the different craziness that she had to go through as far as people talking smack and sending the Humane Society after me and this new COVID, because the COVID is affecting animals too. I mean, come on. They're not immune to an environment. They will be subject to the environmental conditions as well as how they relate to you. And my dog has stayed alive despite 2 dogs attacking her, despite, all of her predispositions with hip dysplasia, skin issues. You know that pit bulls have bred and have these predispositions of hip dysplasia, skin issues, thin fur, other anxiety type of stuff. And that has all been purged out. Like, her fur is so soft, her ears are so soft. Now it's about balancing her microbiome based upon the elements. And sometimes when the weather changes, more pestilence happens. But you know what? I haven't had to put any kind of flea thing on her, really. I think she had maybe 1 or 2 fleas in the middle of the change of the season, and that's it. She has not had a tick on her since like 2016, 2017. When I first got her, she had a tick on her, and I'm like, oh my God. And this is when I was prior to the J juice, and I'm trying to take her to a holistic doctor and said, oh my God, thinking I had to get her vaccinated because of the dog warden, because she has to get her tags. But no, if she bites somebody, then they will check to see if she had her rabies shots, and if she hasn't, then she has to go to quarantine or whatever. But no, I mean, she has not had a tick on her or anything. And the holistic people said, yeah, we do titer tests to see if she has the antibodies for rabies. That's how you get around rabies shots if you needed to prove that. But I never had to need to prove that she had rabies antibodies in her body. Because I know that all rabies is just, a virus, rabies virus, I think. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's just a virus. But if your animal does not have what it takes to handle all the different exposures, then yeah, I mean, they're going to have reactions. The body is going to try to upgrade to the new conditions. But she's been able to live and thrive despite the changes in her environment. That ought to tell you something. So anyone that has anything to say about how I treat my animal and what I do with my animal, how many animals have you buried in your lifetime? Oh, it's a puppy. Oh man, they have, this issue and that issue, and dog is like 18 years old and they're having seizures, and you see the dog is like all getting old, and you see them kind of like, and I'm just like, and then it's time to put the dog down. Can you imagine what it's like for that dog and that vet when they're suffering, right, and they're not getting well at all because the owner isn't giving the dog what it needs to get beyond that calibration point, and they feel the owner's anxiety because they know they're putting their dog down, and they walk away and leave this dog in the care of a freaking vet who is going to give them the lethal injection. That's so morbid. That is so horrific to me. I can't even imagine what it's like for that animal knowing that this is, and they may not know really like overtly, but intuitively know this is they're done. They're being destroyed by their own owner. That's how people get so desensitized by death that they think their own life is expendable and they think their dog's life is expendable. That's the brainwashing. So when animals, so when kids are being exposed to a pet and the owner, the mom and dad are like, yeah, the kid, the animal is life is expendable. It's really not worth much. And once they're not fun anymore, then they're ignored. It's all about the kids. Oh yeah, when you have people that bring in an animal when there's a child, it's all about the child. Yeah, I understand. But what about that animal too that you've taken on that responsibility? What about that animal too? Now I know some animals are not, uh, may not not many people can train their animal to fit in with the household, and not all animals can. You can't take a big, huge Saint Bernard in a small house with two kids that's not trained. Okay, that's just So you got to have the right animal to fit the household, but still, when that animal isn't fun anymore, they are ignored. But you haven't given that animal what it needs to be fun, to be the entertainment, to be the court jester. That's how we treat our animals, as if they were like the court jester, the show dog, the entertainment piece for the kids. And I'm like, animals, they just need a good routine, a reliable place, somebody knows is going to feed them and water them and make sure that their water is fresh and make sure that they're protected from the elements, protected from imbalanced people, and they get the love and they get the access to food and bones and a place to run around. It's all really, the dogs want. Believe me, if dogs really wanted to be free and run around, they would leave as soon as they have the opportunity. And some animals do because they don't get their needs met. So I don't understand why animals leave. Well, now I understand why. Because they're not getting their needs met. My animal had anxiety in the beginning when I first got her from the pound. So we would give her tennis balls and she would destroy the living crap out of those tennis balls. And that's anxiety when your dog has to chew on bones to such a like they have like bully bones where like the Kongs, because the pit bulls will destroy tennis balls, they'll destroy anything that's not a Kong, right? And my dog would know how to take the squeaker out, would know how to destroy those tennis balls, and she would rip until there's nothing, until a little bitty piece. So I have little bitty pieces of tennis ball, and this is prior to the J juice and on the J juice. She would have the anxiety come up because that's what was bred into her. And then all of her PTSD being out there, prior to her going to the pound from the other owners. Finally, I purged out the anxiety out of her. She doesn't. I have two squeaker toys that I expected her to destroy, which she did a couple months back. But lately, through this next COVID episode, she had an episode with the COVID where she did pee in the bed. And then after that, you know what? She hadn't destroyed a tennis ball. Well, she hadn't destroyed tennis balls for a couple of years now. But I give her these squeaker toys. She hasn't destroyed the squeaker toys, and I would squeak it, just trying to trigger her. Nothing. She'd go and play fetch for a minute, but it's like for a minute, then she's bored. She's like, I'm not a fucking show dog. I'm not a fetch dog. Come on, you're totally like treat me as if I'm some kind of idiot. Like she gives me the look like I'm not gonna play fetch for the next 15, 20 minutes. She doesn't have that anxiety to go and fetch something or to go and destroy something. She doesn't. She lets me know what she needs. She lets me know when she wants to go outside. She lets me know when she wants, and she doesn't have that many needs to be met. She's not a high maintenance dog, but some dogs are high maintenance because the owner doesn't give a fuck. And I understand that they don't understand. They just know that, oh yeah, a dog is supposed to be something to play with and that's it. But oh my God, it goes deeper. This dog is a life. This dog has a personality. This dog has needs. And when you buy a dog or when you get inherited a dog or when you get a dog from the pound, they have so many predispositions that you have to know that it needs to be reversed if you're doing the J juice. If you're doing the J juice and you bury an animal, holy crap, why the hell would you bury your animal if you're doing the J juice? If you know the power of J juice, why would you bury your animal? And some people are like, well, maybe they're just not cut out to have the animal with them forever, so they're going to let that animal go and then not get an animal again. I understand that. I know that that scenario does exist that people have animals and they don't really want them anymore, but they're on the J juice and they have different plans going, and it doesn't always entail an animal by their side. And okay, I understand that. I'm not going to get totally upset, but I'm telling you that, then don't ever get an animal ever again if you're on the J juice, because it's going to be a forever thing. You have no excuse now to get an animal on the J juice and let it fucking die. What the hell? That's morbid. That's evil. When you know an animal can live as long as you're alive, don't get an animal anymore if you're on the J juice and you let your animal pass away and you know the power of J juice. But I'm telling you, this is how kids get programmed into accepting death. It's because the parents not only instill it, but then they watch the parents destroy their own pet. And so then the kid learns that, you know what, things that you love will eventually go away. And then, yes, then you hear about the diagnosis. Oh, yeah, the pet had seizures, the pet had yeast infection, the pet had this, the pet had that, whatever. And so, yeah, when their predispositions, they have heart attacks and strokes and aneurysms and cancer in the family, which is basically evolution. They're going to expect to die when those anomalies exhibit themselves, when the body tries to evolve and the person is not giving what it needs. And so they're like, oh yeah, well, my animal Rufus died from a heart attack, so most likely I'll die from a heart attack. And that's the programming. And it's being taught through how people take care of their pets. So if you want to change the programming, you better take on your pet and take on your kid as if they were both the same. If not, then what the hell are you teaching yourself, and what are you teaching your kid, as well as society around you? Have a good day.